I'd like to welcome you all to Sunday service at Ananda Village, and a special welcome to our guests and visitors. The topic today and the reading is from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on Paramahansa Yogananda's commentaries. Do you need a guru? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Many people scoff at the idea of having a guru. True to human nature generally, they make a virtue of their scoffing. I am responsible for what I do, they announce, responsible for my mistakes as well as for my victories. What would I ever learn if I handed over my development to someone else? To depend on another for guidance would be an act of spiritual cowardice. It would be understandable for someone gifted with some trivial ability, for instance with words, to insist on doing his own crossword puzzle himself without letting anyone else help him. But supposing even in such trivial matters he had no such gift, what virtue would there be in refusing to learn? For that matter, moreover, where do our gifts come from? They are not a native ability. Still, crossword puzzles are hardly an important challenge. What if a person wanted to do something daring, to climb a cliff, for instance, but refused to study the art of mountain climbing? He would climb at the risk of his life. And how much more is risked than physical life in the great adventure of the divine search, where the risk is to salvation itself? Where is the sacrifice in seeking guidance? Even a mountain guide wouldn't presume to do one's climbing for one. His purpose would only be to help the neophyte to climb safely. To have a wise guru is not a sign of weakness, but of plain common sense. All the saints, aware as they are of the hazards of the adventure, agree on the importance of having a guide or guru. And these are the heroes speaking, not cowards or spiritual weaklings. Jesus emphasized the importance of having a teacher by asking John to baptize him. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 3, we read of his coming to John. Thus Jesus said to John, "It becometh us to fulfill all righteousness." In the Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter, Sri Krishna says, "Open thyself to those who have attained wisdom. They will be thy teachers. Ask questions of them, both verbally and mentally. Serve them faithfully and with devotion." How is the devotee to recognize one who has attained wisdom? The Bhagavad Gita gives us this inspiring description of the sage. By this sign is he known, being of equal grace to comrades, friends, chance comers, strangers, lovers, enemies, aliens, and kinsmen, loving all alike, evil or good. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning. This is a reading from Whispers from Eternity, which is a book of sacred prayer demands from Paramahansa Yogananda. I attune my life with thine. Now my life has become a long, unbroken inspiration. Thy fountain of bliss refreshes and delights me night and day, whether I be wakeful, fast asleep, or dreaming fondly of thee. Oh, what has become of me? Delight on overwhelming delight. Endless, indescribable thrills of divine light spray unceasingly over me. O aged nectar, wine of centuries, I found thee at last, and will taste of thy sweetness forever, forever, and forever. I was thinking actually if it was any hotter, I'd just say yes, and then we'd go on to the next part of the Sunday service, answering the question, do you need a guru? Several years ago, Swami Kriyanand, in giving an interview with a journalist, in the interview, the man asked him the question, do you need a guru? And Swami Kriyananda surprisingly answered by saying no. And then he paused and he said, unless you want to find God. And then, yes, of course you have to have a guru. But you know, this question, do you need a guru, actually is something important for people that haven't chosen their spiritual path, haven't chosen a guru. But equally important, in a slightly different way, this question is important for those of us that have made that commitment, that have tuned into a spiritual path like we have here with Paramahansa Yogananda. And so I want to talk briefly on both parts, because for the person that is new to the spiritual path, or at least seemingly new, because most of us that even take up the adventure in this lifetime of coming to a place like Ananda, in their souls are seeking something more. There's already something there that is pulling them. Their soul call is pulling them back to something more than just being inspired or feeling just a little bit of peace. But there's always that point for at least many people, if not most people, that there is some hesitation in the beginning. There is reservation. And there is sometimes resistance. Why is that? What is it that's formulating that kind of energy when we're seeking? In a way, you can look at it different ways. One, in a sense, it's God's way of testing us to making sure that we really want to move ahead. But the important thing to oversee the whole perspective is that the question isn't so much seeking the guru, but the emphasis is really finding God. And what in our own lives, moving in that direction from wherever we're at right now, is the essence of the teachings of yoga. It's the essence of every true spiritual emphasis, is moving in that direction from where we're at now. So it isn't necessary that everyone says, I jump on board and take on a guru. And indeed, the wonderful thing about that is that this phrase that's used a couple of times in different ways in the Festival of Light, which is the ceremony that we end our Sunday service with, that God chooses those who choose Him. So the real emphasis for everybody is simply to move more towards that experience of fulfillment. Not just of satisfaction where things go all right, not even with the sense that I feel better in life, but more in the sense, what is drawing me into that deepening fulfillment? Well, if everyone were to take that perspective and act with energy and awareness, then that would be what would be right for them. Wherever they're on the path, if we continue to move with that perspective, God will choose us more and more. So the point is, we need to jump into the experience, offer ourselves completely for God to give us a multiple reception in that. There's a wonderful story. It's a legend. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but I love the story. It's said that when Moses was leading the children of Israel out of bondage in Egypt and they came to the Red Sea, you know the story where suddenly they're there, the obstacle is the water in front of this large body of water, and hot on their pursuit are the Egyptians, wanting to bring them back as slaves in bondage. And so Moses goes up and prays to God and receives the assurance that, don't worry, things will go okay. It's said in the legend that it wasn't until the first people actually walked into the water that the water spread apart. meaning that it isn't until we really engage with God in some way, whether we call God God or not isn't even the point, but whether we really offer ourselves in that direction of opening up more. When we do that, sure, there still may be some hesitation, there still may be some reservations, and probably there's going to be some resistance still. I think one of the fears that a lot of people who are newer to this idea of the guru-disciple relationship have is, will I lose my self-identity? Will I just become a clone? Will I just evaporate as the special person that I am? And of course, a lot of that's coming from that part of us that is the ego. But a part of that is simply the unknown as well, that we just don't know. And that's why all of you here, all of the people that come to a place like Ananda, are given the gift of actually seeing in practice the reality of that. Look at some of the people that have been around for some years that have committed their lives to the spiritual path with accepting a guru. Are they blind followers? Have they lost their minds? You know? There isn't a whole lot of that on any spiritual path. I'm not just saying just here at Ananda, but any spiritual path that is true and giving that focus of coming to the real fulfillment of the soul coming back into its oneness with God. But I remember when I first got into these kind of things and began meditating when I was 18, it wasn't with Yogananda's techniques, but I remember the idea of the guru was very romantic and in a sense very exotic to me. It was just like, sitting to meditate, sitting cross-legged was the way to do it. And soon my back was aching uncontrollably because of that romantic notion. But the idea with the guru, I remember just feeling some connection. And I remember one of my friends who was also into meditation with me, and often we'd meditate together, is that he would just start to denigrate the idea of the guru. Just saying it was just foolish was the kindest word I could describe what he said about it. And it actually set in motion in me this sort of dual thing about the idea of the guru. Part of me started to feel, well, maybe that's true, because I'd never really met anybody that personally up close that had dealt with having their guru there and didn't know what it meant. And so part of me was repelled. It sort of got pushed away from that. And yet there was a part of me that clung to this, even if it was romantic, this notion of having a guru. It was very interesting. Ironically, this friend of mine ended up following a path where there was a guru and ended up being disenchanted about it. And I think he had set in motion this dilemma in his own life because of that. He saw it as an either-or strategy. And either he didn't want the guru or he did want the guru. But he did it sort of blindly, in a sense, when I really reflect on his life and the discussions we had through that period of time. And when I got involved with Ananda and Yogananda, again, he offered the wonderful advice that it was foolish for me to do so. And I said, essentially what I said to him was, I'm going to wait to see the proof in the eating of the pudding. I want to see this by my own experimentation in this direction. Because unfortunately or fortunately at this point in my spiritual life is that I knew I had a fair amount of ego and wasn't going to be swayed over just because everyone else was doing it. And again, as I say, that's both unfortunate and fortunate in the context of all our lives. But what happened was that I was able to just step by step move in that direction, observing, especially when I first came here to Ananda Village in 1978, that I just sensed this is my home. And I didn't mean physical home, although that's true as well to an extent, but really that spiritual home of the soul, of being there, really enriched and fulfilled. Even just walking on the property, I felt that because I could feel something other than just the pieces coming together. I could feel the vibration in all the people. And then I sense there must be some vibration behind the people that's allowing them to be that immersed in this experience. And so for those that are challenged by, is this my path, is Yogananda my guru, or is any spiritual teacher my guru, the focus really is, how do I approach this in finding more of God in my life? How do I find more of that divine experience in my life? Which leads to this question, do you need a guru, applied to those that have made the choice of dedication of discipleship to a guru? Because we forget this part of it, that there are many parts of our day, many parts of our lives that we don't even remember to have the guru's presence. So the answer is yes to the second part of looking at it. Do we need a guru in our lives? More and more so, we need the guru. Because the guru isn't the personality, and this is for new people, this is what happens. We are accustomed to viewing one another through the personality, through our likes and dislikes, through the variance that we see in the world around us. And that's natural. It's just the way that we will relate to a spiritual teacher and a guru, that we put him in that context, or put her in that context that we're accustomed to, we're familiar with, that we're used to from the ego perspective. But that's one of the big hurdles that we all face in the beginning, is allowing ourselves to trust our own inner experience with this and realize there's more than what meets the eye to the spiritual path, although it is in everything, including what meets the eye, in our lives. And so as we become disciples through the years, it behooves us to remember, and this is one of the essences of the Yoga Sutras that Patanjali teaches, of Smriti, that remembrance of our divine reality. That the Guru is simply there to allow us to be in that divine reality, not to impose, not to assert anything other than that which is our real highest destiny. And so, yes, we need the Guru even more so when we're further along the path, to really be just completely immersed in that vibration more and more. And what does that mean? What does that mean? Because we know we can skate off into all sorts of things without that presence of God through the Guru. But a few years ago, Dave Warner, one of our ministers here, was over in India, and he had an interview with Swami Kriyananda, and asked the question, basically paraphrasing it, that it's so easy to feel God's presence and the Master's presence when we're with you, Swami. How can we continue being in that experience when we're not around you physically in your presence? And his answers are the kind of answers that we want to hold, in a sense, in our hearts, emblazoned in our minds, and remembered frequently, if not all the time if we can. That his response was, in anything you do, feel or call to the Guru to be with you in that experience. And then not only to call, but then to feel, to sense that presence, thinking through your thoughts, moving through your actions, being in the heart of your feelings, to really be that experience of the Guru, where the Guru isn't somewhere there, but the Guru is here. And then he said, as a practical tool, he said, chant Om Guru throughout the day to enliven that experience, to shift the tendency of the mind to go into the subconscious or to waver into the various distractions that are around us, to live more in that presence, to be enlivened. As this wonderful reading from Whispers says, that if you think of it attuning to God, oh, what has become of me? Delight on overwhelming delight. Endless, indescribable thrills of divine delight spray unceasingly over me. That's what we're heading towards. That's the direction, step by step, we can offer into that experience. And as the Bhagavad Gita reading says here, there are ways that we can allow ourselves that experience to deepen through faith, having that trust that God is with us, that if we choose God, God will choose us, give us more and more of His presence. And then to have that sense of offering with openness, that we're not just blindly following in that sense of openness, but our openness is offering from our deepest self, our hearts, our consciousness, our awareness. In that openness, we won't be fooled because we're in God's presence already. And then to ask. It says to ask questions both inwardly and outwardly of the Master, of the Guru. A lot of that comes from, if we can, to be more introspective, to find in ourselves that way of asking that we increase our connection with God through the Guru. For instance, at the end of each night, Yogananda recommended that never go to sleep without having the touch of God's presence. And to offer all the day's activities, the things that have been tremendous challenges, the things that have been tremendous successes, and everything in between, to offer that completely into God's hands. And then the Gita says that one other way to really find that fulfillment of needing the Guru and having the Guru's presence is through humble service. That we see ourselves as instruments, that we glow with that delight of being able to have that flow of grace come through us. Because like walking into the Red Sea, we initiate our connection with that grace, and that grace is our guarantee. Let's take a moment for meditation.